Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sen. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, successful mama. It's your friend Patricia. I'm so glad that you are here with me today. We are heading back over to our Wise Money Management for ADHD series. I took a little break to hit back to school, and it kind of snuck up on me, I guess, a little faster than I thought it was going to. And so I did want to go back and finish this topic because I do feel like our money is so important. And not in the sense of money is important in and of itself, but that it is a really big driver of our happiness level, where there's not a level of happiness that can be achieved by excessive money, but there is a minimum threshold of when you don't have money, how stressed and what a struggle life can be when you're in that phase. So take heart, sweet mama. There is something we can do about that. There is a way to lessen the struggle, to make life easier in terms of money. And we're going to be discussing that in this series we already talked about how to not overdraw your bank account and how to pay your bills on time, how to put your savings first. And this next session is a doozy. There's a reason I waited a little bit to get into it. And we're going to be talking about making a budget. Some people think that money stuff, that's the job of dudes. Well, let me tell you, mama, you are a powerful and intelligent woman. And this is something that not only can you do, but you can do really well. I think a lot of times we forget that we are the CEO of our household. I know that people joke about that, but we're the ones making the decisions on a day-to-day basis about how our family runs, how it functions. And women do most of the household purchasing. Of course, now cannot remember the exact percentage. I can't remember if it was 70 or 80%. Women do 70 to 80% of the purchasing for their household expenditures. So that is nothing to sniff at. You might think this is a dude job, but let me tell you, if you're the one who's purchasing the toilet paper, you're the one who's in charge of the money. I know that can feel daunting, but we're going to empower ourselves with the knowledge to make the best decisions possible in terms of our money. And to really manage our money well, it comes down to two things. One, having an awareness of the situation, what money we have, what money's going out, just being aware of where we are. And then the second part is making quality decisions with the money that we have. Now, a lot of people think that budgets are a 4-letter word. They just have this awful feeling about budgets. They think they are constricting, that they are limiting, that they put handcuffs on their enjoyment out of life. And I want us to change our mindset about budgeting. Budgeting is not meant to lessen your happiness. Budgeting is meant to be a tool that you are using to achieve your dreams, to live the life that you want to live. You're not going to make changes in how you're spending until you have a reason to. You have to know your why of where you're going, and then you use your budget. You set it up to match that dream that you're heading toward, to match those priorities, and that budget is a roadmap to help you reach your goal. Now, we can't get where we're going if we don't know where we're going, right? When we get in the car, we don't just hop in and hope for the best. We get in the car because we need to go to the grocery store. We need to go to work. We have a purpose in getting in the car and going. We can't just magically end up there. So when we're talking about our goals and hopes and dreams, we have to be able to put a name to them in order to get there. Now, the great part about knowing where you want to go is that when you know your yes, it's much easier to say no. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, there was this really big, we didn't really have memes back then. It was too long ago for memes. But this saying that you kept hearing people say well, if you could give up your Starbucks coffee habit, then you would automatically have $50 every month to do with whatever you wanted. And here's the thing. You're not going to give up the coffee that makes you happy because it makes you happy. That's silly. You're not just going to give it up to have $50. I know that sounds really like, well, yeah, I'd love to have $50, but most people would rather have the enjoyment they get every morning, that little piece of their coffee happiness every day, than to be holding $50. Holding money in and of itself usually doesn't make people happy. I know that there is probably a few Scrooge McDucks out there that like to go swimming in their gold coins, but overall, like, just having money doesn't make people happy. What makes people happy in having money is that they get to make the life choices that they want to make because they have the means to do it. They have the resources to be able to achieve those dreams and pursue their goals and do the fun things in life that they want to do. If you want to give up that coffee habit, it can't just be to have $50 more. You need to put a picture to that $50. What does that mean for you? Is that $50 the cute top that you've been eyeing at Nordstrom's? Is that $50 going towards the down payment for the new car that you've been wanting? Is that $50 mean that you can join a gym and be able to work out every couple times a week? Like, what does that $50 mean to you? You have to put a value and a vision on it for it to be worth giving up your weekly coffee or your daily coffee trip. So what you need to do is take 5 to 10 minutes before you even start any like the actual nitty-gritty budgeting. Take 5 to 10 minutes and envision, what do you want your future to look like? Where do you want your life to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5, 10 years from now, your retirement? And we are putting this within like the lens of money. What do you want your money life to look like that you can do the things that you want to do in that time frame? Once you have that picture in your mind of the goal that you're going for, it's so much easier to say no to your fancy cup of coffee if you know that that means you're getting closer to the new car. So spend those few minutes thinking about where you're going and then write it down. I hope I'm remembering the percentage right, but I think they said that people who write down their goals are 60% more likely to achieve them when they write them down. Just the simple fact of writing it down on a piece of paper makes people more likely to achieve goals. It's crazy, but it's true. So now that you know where you're headed, now we can make a budget. This is going to take you a few hours. I know, I'm sorry, but I promise it's worth it in the end. Power through with me here. Make some time in your calendar, like set it aside. If you need to break it up, obviously it does take us longer to do things if we break them into pieces because we have to like reset our mind, gather our supplies, etc. all over again. But if you're going to lose focus an hour in, like keep your hour of productivity going and then say, okay, we'll touch on this again tomorrow. You really need to schedule in, when are you going to tackle this task? Okay, let's talk a few budget basics before we start. Budgets normally run in about a month. Why? Well, because usually your bills are for a month long. And there are some that you'll want to break your budgets into weekly. For example, like if your grocery budget for the month is $500 and there's 4 weeks, that's $125 a week. That's something that, like I usually go to the grocery store once a week. I know that I can keep it within $125. Now, keep in mind that your budget's kind of in this like average world. It's not always going to be exactly the same, but we're just trying to get a feel for things. So it's not going to be exact. Just be aware. And the whole goal is to compare what you have coming in and what you have going out. And the goal is obviously to have more money coming in than going out, because if you have more money going out than coming in, eventually somebody's going to get mad because you're using someone else's money, or you are paying a hefty price tag in order to borrow that money, which is what loans are. So as we're filling out this template, you can find 1,050,000 templates online. And I was going to pull one up, but then I realized like everyone has different software, Mac versus PC, whatever. You can find a budget online, Pinterest, Google, locate it. Just make sure it's a very detailed budget. Don't get the ones that are like, have 6 categories. Like we're moms, we have families, we got a lot of different things going on. It's not all going to fit in 6 categories, right? Now, as you're filling in your actual numbers, I know our tendency is that we want to just like fill a number in and keep on trucking, but please do not estimate. I promise you, whatever you estimate is wrong. In the same way that we think that this task is going to take us 5 minutes and it actually took us 30 minutes, you are also going to think you only spent $20 in restaurants last week when actually you spent $100. Do your best to go and research and find the answers as much as you can. Like obviously don't get too crazy about the details because we don't want to spend 100 years doing this project, but really want to push for as much precision as possible as you're filling in these numbers. If you do need to estimate, always round your income amounts down and your expenses amounts up. Then you'll come out ahead. It's always better to think you have less money coming and then you have extra money. You're like, yeah, I have extra money. Than the other way around of, I don't have enough to cover that. Okay. Next, try to avoid any miscellaneous categories on budgets. It's like the junk drawer. It just gets full of crap and then you don't even know what's in there anymore. So do your best to find a category that is close or make another category. Don't just throw a bunch of stuff in miscellaneous because that's too hard to control. Just like the junk drawer gets out of control, just avoid it. As you're filling this out, remember to think of everybody in the family. What are you spending on yourself, your spouse, the kids, if you are supporting any other family members? Really, we're trying to be all-encompassing here of every penny that's going out the door. We want to be able to say, here's where it went. Also, in terms of family, keep in mind that it's our job to teach our kids how to be responsible adults. And so at some point, depending on how old your kids are, you're going to want to start introducing these concepts to them. And so just kind of have it in the back of your head that at some point you want to teach your kids how to be good with their money when you're good with money so that they will be set up for an even better future. That's one thing. I'm really lucky. My dad is very good with money and he taught me how to handle my money from a young age. And I really credit that to him for the financial stability that I've had. Even when times were tough and I was pinching pennies, I still always knew that I could pay my bills, even if I was eating turkey sandwiches every day of the week for months. Next, priorities matter. Your budget is not going to look like everybody else's budget. Your budget is going to be reflective of how you live your life. So understand that you're going to have more money in certain categories than other people would. You're also going to spend less money on things that are not important to you. Keep in mind that this is also not set in stone forever. When you create your budget, you're looking at the next 6 months to a year, but life is constantly changing. You have more kids or you have kids in school or there's always something going on where your money flow is going to have to modify with it. So know that this is important and it carries value, but it's not etched in marble. You're going to reassess it throughout the year in order to make sure that it is still reflective of your current situation. In that, I would suggest getting some kind of template that you can modify. I really like using Excel because I grew up on that. I've used it for work. It's just an easy program, but you want to be able to go in and modify it. If you do it all on paper, you got to do all those hand calculations and then you got to not lose the paper and you got to keep up with more writing. The template is so much easier on the computer. And then lastly, give yourself grace. It's going to take time to adjust to your new budget. There's going to be times where you said you were only going to spend $500 on groceries and you realize halfway through the month that you already spent $400 and you only have $100 left for the next 2 weeks and you're going to have to make some ramen noodle and hot dog decisions. And that's okay, except that this is a life lesson, that you have learned something from it, and then use that knowledge to do better next time. Okay, so now that we kind of have some basics out of the way, let's talk about the supplies we're going to need. You need to find your paychecks, any income statements. You can pull all this stuff up on your online banking, your credit card statements, for the expenditures that you've made. Basically, you need to find evidence of everything coming in and everything going out. So you probably need your computer. You can do it on paper, but obviously it's more effort. And then you'll need to find that template online that matches how detailed you want to be. Now, we're going to look at last month as a good starting point. I know you don't have all the info because obviously you weren't planning on doing this before, but I also don't want you to wait another month to start this. So we're going to look at last month as kind of a gauge to see how we did. And then, going forward, you're going to be saving evidence in some form or fashion of all the things you spend so that you can input this information into your budget. I know that sounds like a lot, but you're only going to do this for a couple months where you're super nitpicky about everything until you get a handle on it. And then you can calm down a little bit. Now, remember, if you have to guess at a number, always guess that your income is lower and that your expenses are higher because it's better to be that direction than the other. If you are guessing, make sure that you mark that in a different color on the template so that way you can kind of get a feel at the end for which of these numbers are solid information and which of these numbers are guesses. So that way when you go to make your budget, you have an idea of, I know how much this is going to be, or, oh, this might be a guess. Now, on your actual template, you're going to be filling in the actual numbers that you had last month. And in the next column, I want you to a column for a budget. We'll talk about that. And then you're going to have columns going across for each of the following few months as you get the hang of this. We're going to start by writing down all the money you have coming in a month. Your paychecks, if you need to do some math because you get paid every 2 weeks, figure out how much you make per day and then multiply that by the number of days you worked in that month, which is usually like 20, 21. If you get paid twice a month, that's easy. Just add those two numbers together. If you have a job where your pay varies, like if you're commission-based or your hours change every week, then what I want you to do is work off your lowest month. I know that's going to make you sad, but you want to prepare for the worst. If you have extra money, great. Like if you know you have a commission-based job and your money's going to vary greatly, like you'll want to have a secondary kind of budget for like, okay, when I have extra money, here's where it's going to go. But at least I know I have all my necessities covered. Okay, next we're going to have to go through everything you spent last month. I know, overwhelming. I really recommend enlisting a friend to help you with this, or your spouse if they're a little more detail attentive. I know it's going to be hard, but again, we're putting in the sacrifice now so that we can get to that goal. Think back. What was your vision? What are you working towards? This is the blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting into in order to get there. I'm not going to list every expense under the sun. You can Google a list, but I really want you to think about first all the things that you have to pay that are like non-negotiable things, like taxes, child support, home costs, health insurance, all those things that you don't really have a ton of wiggle room on. Put all those down first. These are the things that you have to pay to be a responsible human, right? I also want to make sure that you put in that section is your savings money. If you haven't listened to the episode called Savings First, it is episode 22. I recommend going back and looking for that one so that you can kind of understand why I say your savings money goes up front in the non-negotiables area. Once you've figured out all those must-pay things like childcare and health costs, take that total and subtract it from your income. And now you've got your disposable income. This is your more like fun discretionary money. You get to decide how you're going to spend it. Obviously, some people are going to be like, Patricia, we didn't even talk about food yet, and groceries are not fun. Well, yeah, I know, but there's a difference between going grocery shopping at the Family Dollar and going to Whole Foods. So there's a lot of wiggle room in how you can spend grocery money. So when we look at disposable income, these are all the things that you have a lot of leeway and choice in how you spend it. You want to look at all your bills like cell phone, cable, internet, fuel, transportation costs, groceries, everything for the house, pets, memberships, entertainment, kids' activities, birthdays, all that stuff. Again, you can Google a list of like all kinds of categories, but you want to make sure that you have written down every single thing you spent that you can find in the last month and put it in the spreadsheet. Go through your online banking transactions, go through your credit cards, pilfer through all the receipts at the bottom of your purse, like get it all in there. Now, like we said, this is not 100% accurate because you weren't planning on keeping track of all these things. And so sure, some things kind of flew out the window. So if you remember those, add in what you think it might be. But we're going to kind of look at what you spent and then take a look at what you want to set your budget for. Some people do the budget first and then they realize that it's not in line with what they've been doing. So I like to do the kind of estimate of what we've been doing and then decide on your budget after you know what you're already spending. Because here's the thing, you can't just throw out all of your usual habits and just the way you live your life and expect that you're just going to like magically turn into a monk and not purchase anything. Like that's crazy and unrealistic and you're going to fail. So we want to start our budget based on what we're actually doing and then we'll modify from there. And we'll talk about all that in the next episode. So for example, if you look at your cell phone bill and I really like my plan, I don't want to change it, so I'm just going to stick with the $200 I spend on cell phone bills, then go ahead and stick that in your budget. If you want to say, ooh, you know what? I don't really know that my cell phone means that much to me. I could probably cut that back. You could set your budget lower and then start looking for a cheaper option. Once you've got your budget set of like where you think you want to spend money, then you're going to spend at least 1 month minimum. Really, you probably need to do like 3, maybe 4 months of tracking all your expenses so that you can kind of see, are you actually living your life in the way that you said you were going to? Now, there's a lot of ways you can keep track of this. You can just throw all your receipts in an envelope. There's plenty of apps that do this. Like, I have a lot of friends who like the You Need a Budget app. Personally, when I'm doing like a true like budget watch, I don't use cash because I feel like whenever cash appears, I don't know where it went. So I try not to use cash for anything. And I just put everything on one credit card. So that way it's all together in one spot and I can easily see what I've been spending on. Now, make sure you actually pay off the credit card at the end of the month. But that's what works best for me. By the end of the month, you want to have all the expenses filled in. Try not to wait till the end of the month to do it all because that's really overwhelming. Preferably like once a week, go in, put in everything that you've spent. Obviously, what your spouse has spent as well. Kids, if they're old enough to be spending your money. So try to keep on top of that so it doesn't get too overwhelming. So then your job is to compare. You've estimated how much you think you want to spend on this. And now you look at the last few months and see what are you actually spending on it? What things are higher than you thought they were going to be? What things are lower than you thought they were going to be? And then why? That's the really important part is why am I spending more money on this than I thought? And here's the kicker. You want to think about what are the things that matter to you most? Where do you want to be spending your money? What are the things that don't matter and you could cut back and it's not really that big of a deal? This is starting to get like the process going, which we'll talk about next week of like, where are the things that are important to you? Are you putting your money where you say things are important? What are the things that aren't that important or that you are willing to sacrifice in order to make better choices? Start thinking about like where you can trim back expenses. And we'll chat more on that next week. Now that you really understand what you're spending your money on, you can make a real solid budget that makes sense for you. So this is a process, right? We started out with where we thought it was going to be. We've adjusted. Your budget is like a living document. You're going to keep making it work for your present stage. So I want you now that it's been a couple months of really being mindful of all the things that you're spending, does that make sense with where you want to be? Where are you going in your life? And once you create this budget and you and your spouse have agreed, like this is where we stand, you have to uphold that promise to yourself, to your spouse, and to future you, that these things are valuable enough that you're willing to make those sacrifices in order to get there. Because when you're breaking that promise, you're breaking down the trust that your spouse has in you. You're breaking down the trust that you have in yourself. You're lying to future you. You're taking away from future you that happiness that you want to live when you're later in life. It really needs to be held in like a high position of priority so that you can hit those goals that you want to be at. And that goes for your spouse as well. And we'll talk more about this next week, but everyone needs to be on the same page. And then once you've got your budget kind of in line and you feel good about it, you still want to check in with it when you're doing your bill paying. You can look back at, I think it was episode 24 was how to pay your bills on time. That rhythm of keeping on top of your money, being aware of it. But then you also want to set a date, maybe like 6 months in the future, where you can check in and see, does this budget still fit our lifestyle? Is this reflective of where we are? Do we need to make any adjustments? And then you and your family can figure out what things need to change going forward for the next few months. So, Mama, I know that was like a doozy of an episode, a lot of work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get your budget in line. But to have an awareness of your money and know where it's coming from, where it is going, and why it's going there. How are you going to get to your future goals, your visions, using that budget as a tool, as a roadmap to get where you want to be? That has so much value, sweet mama, and it will enrich your life in ways that I can't really explain on a podcast or just in real life. It's hard to explain that. That lightness, that feeling that you have when you are being productive and achieving your goals, but it really will take a lot of stress out of your life. And that's what I want for you. I want you to have a less stressed life. I want you to feel more confident. I want you to be able to create that calm that we can all achieve even with the craziness of an ADHD brain. So, sweet mama, I know that's a lot of homework to do, but I hope that it is encouraging to have a step-by-step plan on how you're going to get there and be the master of your money. I will talk to you next week, Successful Mama. Thank you for listening to Motherhood in ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodinadhd.com.